Welcome to the Boomerang Podcast, and I'm here with my good friend, Bill Ogden. Bill Ogden's from Tactical Civics. Welcome to the podcast, Bill.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. So we were just talking a little bit about, because we're a gold company, right? We're Midas Gold Group. What are your thoughts on gold and silver? Let's kick it off with that.
I like it. I want some. You can send it to me. We'll store it for you. Nothing wrong with either one. The Amish are into it. It must be good. There's a fellow that talks about a community in the Midwest where the Amishmen all go work construction, and when they get paid, they come and they pool 30% of their funds and buy gold and silver coins. And their strategy is to hold them jointly. When the collapse comes, and it's coming, those farms out there, for instance, will be foreclosed on. And you got a $200,000 combine or something. The bank doesn't want your combine. They don't want it.
For 10 grand.
They want, so for 5 cents on the dollar, you could buy it from them if you had sound money. The same thing is true for the land. And so their plan is to buy all these assets back at pennies on the dollar and then put them back in the hands of the guy that was using them in the first place and let him pay it off over 7 years. And it's pretty. And then they'll say, we'll go in. If there's a hardware store we like, we'll bail him out too. But it all comes back to converting some of their current wealth into gold and silver. I think it's a brilliant strategy.
It is. That's what I do on the daily. I do these podcasts because I want to give people perspective, people like you, people that are in the fight, people that have knowledge that I think should be out there, Tactical Civics, which is, what you're part of. That's the type of thing that if every American understood it and every American went through the teachings of it, the world would be a better place. It would, right?
Well, prior to Tactical Civics, when I'd go around and see groups, I'd tell them things like everybody's looking for someone else to do the work.
Right.
We go to the doctor. We don't want to talk about nutrition, exercise, hydration, nothing. Just give me a pill. Just give me a pill.
Right.
I'll be all right. We put our kids on yellow taxi and expect them to come back in 12 years and be model citizens and adults. And of course, if you want your kids to know something, I'm pretty sure you had better tell them, or they won't hear it anywhere else.
Exactly.
We expect to send people to our state capital or Washington. We elect them, we vet them then, and then we send them away for a couple of years. I hope everything's fine. Love seeing you. And we don't even pay attention to them. We don't know. Like Fetterman, our senator up here, he can't even make the dress code. I mean, that's how bad it is.
That's a joke. Have you seen the different Fettermans, by the way, the different versions?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there are.
I think there's something to that, man.
What's the other one we do? Corporate. Religion. We expect a minister to read the scripture, talk to Jesus, tell us what was covered in a brief meeting, and get me out of there on time to go boating. And there's 4 examples where we expected someone else to do the work, the hard stuff, and then we're not happy with the results. And in every case, corporate medicine, corporate education, corporate politics, and corporate religion has failed us. It's failing us all around, just like corporate finance in many cases. Up here, we're a small town. We had a local bank, and it used to be that you go in and they'd loan you money, but now they send the application out to people that you don't know, and they don't know you. And the federal rules apply. What's that? Asset forfeiture. I read a little bit about that. If I deposit more than $10,000, they got to fill out a form and send it to the government. Well, maybe I had $10,000. Did you ever think of that? Maybe I'm not a criminal. No, they turn it in. And under civil asset forfeiture, if I understand the rules, they can confiscate all your holdings. And when you complain, they have 180 days to respond. And it's just nuts. It's just nuts. Converting to gold and silver makes sense for those reasons, because we can exchange person to person something that has known value.
And you can do it outside the threshold of the government. In other words, if you want to come paint my house, and I want to pay you in, a couple silver American Eagles, we can do that. We can transact like that. And what is the government trying to do? They're trying to bring us into this central bank digital currency, which is a digital prison. Currency. And that way, you can't pay, there's even value to cash when you think about it. I mean, I know it's backed by nothing, but at least it's tangible. At least I can invite a painter over for a day to go paint, one of the bedrooms if I needed to, and I could just pay him cash and be on his way. But they want everything centralized. They want total control. And I think it gets a lot into the fact that people have just become complacent in general. Right. I mean, the reason why even somebody like myself isn't into civics and things, I learned it in school. I was part of a generation that did have civics classes, unlike today. But I feel like that's been really removed for so many years that people just, they focus on sports and, the football game and the nonsense, the bullshit. And it's like people really, if people only took, the Green Bay Packers as seriously as they do tactical civics and just civics in general, I really think we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in.
I was talking to a medical professional yesterday about going over the threshold. Big medicine was doing a good job up to a point. Then it went over and it's going down the other side. And now it's not being run about the patients, being run about the lawyers and the insurance companies. Education also crossed that threshold some time ago. And people are provincial. We want our school and our sports team. And I still know the alma mater and so on and so forth. But we're not getting the product we want. We're just not getting it. One of my granddaughters, we were working on math, and she said, "No, that's not how you do it." I said, "Was it the correct answer?" "Yeah, but we can't. We have to do it a different way." I said, "Here's a lesson in life, sweetheart. Nobody cares how you get them the right change. They only want the right change. And it would be well if you would learn to count it up. That's 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Thank you." That's what people care about. Not did you use an abacus, count your toes, have a calculator on an iPhone.
Right.
And I learned a quote some years ago: "Common sense ain't too common," but that's where we are. And again, for education, if you want them to know, you better tell. What's today? Tuesday. 2 weeks ago, yesterday, our first great-grandchild was born. Colton Ray, probably got a future in country music. I said, bring back the mullet kind of a kid. But his parents are 20. And so I was waxing reflective and just giving them some of the wisdom points that you remember from having raised 4 kids and grandkids of our own. Things like they're a lot more durable than what they'll lead you to believe. Kids are pretty resilient. Don't do stuff to them on purpose, but, kids are pretty resilient. Go ahead and have more right away because the price is never coming down and you won't have more free time in the future. It's easier to have them in groups than it is one at a time.
Right.
And things like that. When they tell a young person 20 years goes by like that, so do 40. And so enjoy it.
Yeah, I used to have if you look at some of my earlier videos, I was rocking the mullet up until a couple months ago. I agree with you. Bring back the mullet. It's actually a pretty badass haircut. Tell my viewers, tell them a little bit about Tactical Civics. Tactical Civics was created by David Zuniga. Give us some background.
Well, there's been about 60,000 hours of research go into it, years and years by the America Again Trust, and then he stood up the action arm, Tactical Civics. And the basic premise is that we're going to enforce the Constitution for a change. You muted there.
I just said what a concept as far as
what a concept. It's never been done.
Never been done.
I use the wagon wheel approach, the spokes on the wheel. People have all these ideas on how we're going to solve the problem. And of course, what's the problem? You've identified it. Unsound money, open borders, surveillance state, violation of privacy, being governed against, or any or all of those are the problem. But what's the solution? Everything from ignoring it individually, ignoring it collectively, abdicating my citizenship. That's defensive, but it doesn't solve the problem. Open conflict, not a good idea. Elect the right guy, but what about when he's done? Elect the right team. There is no right team. You want me to give you 4 reasons I know there isn't? Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona. They all had problems electing their own team the last couple of cycles.
Right.
And, party politics was the solution. We wouldn't have the problem, would we? And then there's this one spoke over here that says, enforce the Constitution. Had we enforced the Constitution all along, we would not be facing the problems we're currently facing. Sound money. Well, you just say sound money. It should explain a lot to people. And of course, the third part, and this is the one that's rubber meets the road, and that is citizens in a free republic have an obligation to participate in the organs of governance that provide oversight and enforcement. And I get in a lot of these conversations and the word they's thrown around. They did this or they're not doing that. And if I say, this is going to sting, but it's we. If your kids don't know the Constitution, whose kids are they? Who sent them to that school where they didn't learn it? Whose fault is it? Personal responsibility and accountability. You have your own gold business. Is that correct?
Correct. I'm not the owner, but I'm the guy here.
You're entrepreneurial.
I'm not the owner. I just I run the office here in Phoenix.
The people that wrote the Constitution all own businesses, every one of them. Up here, my great-great-great-great-grandfather served in the Revolutionary War, and he was given a tract of land for his service, and I've inherited. I'm the owner. But I'm not really the owner. I'm the chief steward. If something goes wrong, who do they talk to? If something needs paid, who do they talk to? The buck stops with me. There was an old commercial, got to make the donuts. 2 Sundays ago, I'm out in the barn in the afternoon rolling up horse tape on a spool. Somebody said, why did you do that? I said, because it needed done. Why don't you just throw it out and get new? Because I'm paying for it and it's still useful. Well, why doesn't somebody else do it? Well, I'm in charge. I'm also in charge in this country. This is my country, my republic. I inherited it, like it or not. And we've hired people in the form of the Constitution. We've hired people to do certain functions. And if they're not doing those functions, it is up to me to figure out why and to affect that change. And so Tactical Civics has a 4-phase approach to solve this particular problem. And I'm going to go through it at lightning speed. Phase 2, and I know I didn't do phase 1. Phase 2 is in every county, we're going to restore the county grand jury where the citizens meet and discuss, are our public servants doing the job we assigned them or not? If they're not, they'll come up with an indictment and the individual or individuals can explain themselves to the 12-man jury. Go ahead and prove your innocence in court. Along with that, we're going to restore the lawful militia. Militia is law enforcement and nothing more. It's not a military organ. In a scenario where, I don't know, the sheriff is corrupt, who do you go to search or subpoena the sheriff? The deputies? The sheriff's corrupt. Who do you go to? The next highest authority is the people. Who do you go to if it's a DA? Who do you go to it if it's a county manager and they're in charge of the police? It's got to be the people in law and the militia. Militia is not a bad word. It's in the Constitution. It's not the 3% going to kill.
Right.
It's been demonized all over the place. Phase 3 is we're going to press in 27 states for the passage of a pending amendment, been pending for a couple hundred years, that limits a federal congressional district to 50,000 people. Right now, there's 750,000 people in your congressman's district. That's why you never see the guy. At 50,000, it would create 6,880 Congress people, roughly. And Tactical Civics, I believe, will help identify, vet, and get those people elected. And when we get them down in Congress and they're sworn in, their first action should be to pass the Bring Congress Home Act. It's kind of fun. I heard Nate Kane, if you know Nate, he's running for Congress in West Virginia. He wants to introduce it. He says, I want to introduce the bill that distributes Congress back to the districts. What a concept, like you said. Fascism, when he accused Trump of it, I looked it up. Fascism is when big government and big business organize to abuse the citizen. Big tech, big media, military-industrial complex, big medicine, big farm, so on. When they come home and live in the district, you will see them at the same Walmart you shop in, or you will see them at the convenience store, or at the golf course, or whatever. And you'll say, hey, Congressman, what's this bonehead idea that Charlie up there is having about doing such and such? Fascism stops when we bring them home. They will represent the people they see every day. Who are they seeing now? Lobbyists. Who writes legislation now? Lobbyists.
Right.
We can fix that. Phase one, that's 4 phases. Phase one is to populate our chapters. We're up over 55%. We're in more than half of all counties. We've grown by a factor of 12x in the last year. We're accelerating now. The people are ready. I have a habit of saying every day, the corrupt criminals in government do things to enhance market conditions for me, same as they're doing for you. Every day they debase the currency, just makes more business for you. People want a solution. We want it solved. I don't want to have to do this here. I don't mind learning about it. But in terms of having to face the same problems repetitively, how long do we have to face the same problems? Part of the motivation is, I got a 2-week-old kid around here. I expect to live long enough for him to start asking me questions like, has it always been this bad, or did it just go downhill for my generation? What were you doing when it started to get bad? And, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, the kids get it. The kids get it, and they're lucky they have you as somebody in the house, a role model, somebody in the thick of it. I mean, I had Mark Fincham in here last week. He's sitting where I'm sitting right now, and he's like, Matt, he's like, your company's more of the modern day bank than it is anything else. It's like people can come in here, and I probably have more cash on hand here than going to your local, Chase Bank over here. If somebody wants to come in here and cash in their gold, it's like I could have in and out quicker than, filling out the paperwork in the bank and, this, that, and the other thing. It's like, I really think the gold companies that still stand, because remember, a lot of them have gone out of business over the years. But I think we're the banks of the future, perhaps. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the banks of the present aren't going to cut it. They're not our friends. If you're not looking at other institutions to at least diversify your holdings, what are you doing? Why are you giving it to them? Well, what have they done for you lately? The benefit of having lived a while, I watched when the banks were consolidating their management levels. And I want to say it was Mellon Bank out of Pittsburgh went from 7 levels of management down to 3 and laid all those people off. And as luck would have it, as I travel around, I'd meet some of the folks that were still in banking, and they talked about how it used to be folks that never had any debt in their whole life would retire and want to travel, and they needed a credit card. And their community banker could no longer issue them one. It had to go to a central office where the people didn't know who they were. And, at least you know who's walking in your door. And if you don't know them, you know the gold that they're handing you.
Yeah, very true. My whole theory on the banks is that I think the banks are already bankrupt. I think the game that's being played right now is, it's like nothing becomes real until you see it on the fake news. Like until, Fox News or CNN or MSNBC admits something's happening, it doesn't exist. But I think right now, my theory at least, is that the banks are already bankrupt. And the way I've kind of broken it down is that I look at the deep state as operating with problem, reaction, solution. So they're going to create the problem, they're going to get the desired reaction, and then they're going to come in with the solution that they already have, which is a central bank digital currency. Their only problem this time, of course, is that I think they're going to have to compete for the solution, which is going to be Trump, right? I think Trump and the good guys, the white hats, if you will, I think that they have something planned to bring us back to, let's say, constitutional money, back to gold and silver.
The move will be made to bring us back to constitutional fill in the blank. Whatever it is, that's what we're going to do. after we bring Congress home, we're going to start playing the game. Where in the Constitution did you get the authority for that? Where in the Constitution does it say you can own 2/3 of a Western state? How does that work? You don't have that authority. Where in the Constitution did it set up the Department of Education, Department of Energy, Department of Justice, the EPA? EPA was an executive order by Nixon. Out west, people out west are abused by BLM or Fish and Game or whomever. Back here,
Bundy's.
As you say, Bundy's?
Bundy's, yeah.
Yep.
That whole situation.
Yeah, I studied it. Of course, when you go north up to the Maher Refuge and that standoff, not that it was a standoff, but Uranium One was in that country 5 years early prospecting. Whose fingerprints are those? And that, I tell these stories to people. You have a corrupt government official. In that case, it was the territorial governor in bed with a business mogul, an Irish immigrant who owned a store and other properties, and they conspired to murder a competitor, and so Billy the Kid rose to fame. He was one of the displaced boys. But let's not forget that although Billy the Kid was notorious, he was responding to the fact that John Tunstall had been gunned down by the corrupt businessmen. Roll it forward to Missouri. A corrupt railroad official in bed with corrupt government punches a railroad through people's land, and when they couldn't get Mrs. James to talk, they threw a firebomb in and it blew up, killed the kid. Frank and Jesse didn't like that. They'd had years of training in the Confederate Army. They knew how to stop trains and rob them and so on. To some, they were heroes. To some, they were criminals. Roll forward. Harry Reid's son, Harry Reid was the senior Democrat senator in Congress. His boy was a real estate guy, and he had a deal with a Chinese solar company to put up a solar farm. The problem was the desert tortoise. They were going to displace a bunch of these tortoises, and they needed somewhere to put them. And some genius said, well, down in the tip of the county there's this crazy Mormon guy that hasn't paid his BLM fees. We can put the turtles there. That's what that was all about. A corrupt government official and a business deal, and we're going to abuse the citizens. Of course, Bundy was eloquent. I don't know if you ever listened to him speak from memory what the Constitution says. And, they have 200 and some odd men coming across multiple states. Where's the Posse Comitatus Act, he says. He also had the good sense to go out and film ahead. They filmed the water tanks they built. He said, we were here before this was a state. He said, see those names around the cistern? That's all the ranchers that helped put it together. We bought those water rights over time. And then he'd say, look at what it does for the wildlife. The government people who are charged with caring for the land came in and ripped out the water. You roll ahead to Oregon, and I'll think of those people's name. They were the last ranchers up there. And Teddy Roosevelt came through and he saw all the wildlife, waterfowl and stuff. So he put in a wildlife preserve next to the ranches up there. Of course, the ranches are what attracted the wildlife. Over time, as people left, the government bought them out, but they would do things like dam up streams to make it dry, or dam up streams to make it flood, or whatever they could do to run people out. The BLM folks actually had a hit list of Mormon ranchers that they wanted to take out. They had their pictures on the wall and they'd cross them out and so on. And these guys on the ranches up there, they got convicted on 2 fires. One was a lightning strike, and they did a back burn to put it out, and it cost 1.5 acres of federal land. And the other was a controlled burn, which is a standard ag practice out there that burned 1 acre of federal ground. And so they were convicted of starting fires as terrorists. They served their time and got out, and the prosecutor said, no, it's a mandatory 5-year minimum. So they went back. 74-year-old man and his son, 2 lead guys in a ranch. That's what that whole thing in Oregon was about. Corrupt government officials trying to drive the ranchers off the land underneath which are uranium deposits. It's the same story over now. Here's where this goes away. BLM's not a constitutional organization. There's no authority for them to exist. Federal government has no authority to have those adjacent lands. It's not in the Constitution. When we restore the Constitution and enforce it, we stop the abuse of the people. I have another phrase I like up here. We're not a bunch of ignorant hillbillies looking to ruin the environment in which we live. I want to leave the next generation clean water, clean air, some soil, wildlife that we have. We got elk, we have beaver, we have fishers, we have bobcat, we have coyotes and deer, we have eagles. It's just Garden of Eden up here. I don't want to ruin that for my grandkids. So we're not looking to do so. Exactly what interest does a government official have in my land that I don't?
Exactly.
How are they more qualified to care for it than I am?
People have it backwards. It's that people look to the government to come save the day. It's like, no, we're capable adults here. We live here. We want to preserve the water, the wildlife, the this, the that, the other thing. And people have been duped into the opposite way of thinking, which, of course, empowers the BLMs of the world or the EPAs of the world. I mean, look what the EPA did to the Colorado River, 10, 15 years ago. They spilled a whole bunch of toxic chemicals. It destroyed a good portion of the Colorado River. I mean, they've done more damage to the environment than they've helped. The ATF, here's another group. I mean, weren't they running guns to Mexico, to the cartels? I mean, here they are busting people with, firearms over, kicking in doors. Yet these are the biggest gun runners of them all.
Yeah. The purpose of education is not to hire teachers. They're a means to an end. The purpose of governance is not to hire all these people but persecute us. And although it may make them uncomfortable, it's fun to remind them from time to time, you work for me, young man.
They don't like that.
Well, it's I don't know if you know Ann Vandersteel in the podcast world or not. She's been going to the border a good bit. And she and Michael Yon, among other things, got in a helicopter and were flying over looking at stuff. And they had a congressman in the airplane, and she was explaining the order of governance. The people are supreme, and then the hired folks. And this congressman said, no, we're federal. We're on top. Where do you get that notion? It doesn't square with reality. Not only are the people supreme, the Supreme Court doesn't tell me what to do. The Supreme Court is a football referee for the people that work for me.
Right.
And it's just, I'm always amazed at what they think they have title to.
Yeah, you get these people, they just want to continue to expand government. I was just actually down at the border with Bill Jackson, who you just met maybe about 2-3 weeks ago. We went down there. We get, we see we're in Yuma, because we're in Arizona. We drove down to Yuma, spent a couple days there, did a little, filming at the wall. But, you have the big Trump wall, and then it ends, and then it's just, whatever. And we're there, and there's bottles of water. There's, tents set up for these people. I mean, Border Patrol comes by. I mean, people must have been there the night before. Quite literally, they must have been there. They're just letting these people in. They don't give a damn, which brings me to my next question, which is, I mean, what do you see happening in 2024? And before you answer that, I'll tell you what I see. And that is, we don't have an election. There are no more elections until you get rid of these machines and all this other fraud. I just don't see an election, which I think could also be a good thing, because that might be a catalyst for more people looking at something like tactical civics, right? It might be actually a spark for your program.
Well, did we have an election last time?
No.
Did we have an election a time before?
No.
Because according to the other team back in 2016, it was stolen from them. They had hearings in the Senate. I watched Camilla talk at length about the machines are fraudulent and so on. So apparently they know that it's fraudulent. They just trip the triggers better than the rest of us. But separating ourselves from the mechanics of it. Are you native Arizonan?
I'm not. I'm actually originally a New Yorker.
Okay. Would the country have been better off electing John McCain than Barack Obama, or would it have been the same abuse, but he's from our team?
Would have been the same abuse, but from our team.
Because when they're selecting the candidates for both sides, I forget who said this, there was a financial collapse, and the sitting president and the candidate for president from both parties all canceled all activities to go meet with the banks. It sort of tells you who's running things.
Right.
I mean, it's not them, it's the bankers.
Bankers.
And I was first a little bit put off by Trump because I'm not a New Yorker, but I grew to like what the guy stood for. And I liked the marketing skills, quite frankly. He brought it in under budget and on time. Had a schedule. I think he campaigned on 10% of the money. But imagine the people that hate him. The political class of folks who get consultants, because there's no money for consultants. He hired his kids to do it.
Right.
He didn't staff up, which maybe was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. There were a whole bunch of administrative positions just left empty. We don't need all those people. And I think he was a real threat to everybody. He doesn't need your money. He doesn't need your consultant. He doesn't, I think he's still a threat as an outsider. The challenge I have is, even if we get him elected, which will be entertaining, what do we do in 4 years? Who's the standard? Don Jr. or what? And so I always said, when you hire an executive, you're going to get executive decisions, and boy, did we. And of course, if you live by the executive decision, you die by it too, and we have. So we've been playing that game. How about we just run it by the Constitution and limit the power of the executive? Give him specific things and less of it to do. Maybe more golf. Eisenhower seemed to do things and play a lot of golf. He was concerned about the military-industrial complex. Nobody listened. In Iraq, I think we stood their government up, and they voted on paper, right, and dipped their thumb in the ink. Paper ballot, same-day counting, walk to the poll. Why can't we do that? What is the limiting factor keeping us from doing that?
They say it's too expensive, Bill. It's too expensive. The machines cut down the cost.
Who says?
They. It's
they. Speed benefits the media.
Yes.
It gives you today's results today. If we do hand count and paper ballot, it's going to take a week in some cases for us to get it right. But why don't we want to get it right? Why do we care that the media has? Why do I need to know tonight? Geez, Fox News was calling it before it was over. Why do we need to do it that way? They can't even get enough poll workers. And this comes back to another premise I have. If you're not happy with the way things are turning out, it's your fault. What are you doing? Are you participating? I don't know if it was Boomerang or where I was, but somebody said the founders of this republic, they were geniuses. I said, maybe they weren't any smarter than you and I, but they had a real thirst and hunger for freedom.
Yeah. I saw you say that. Yeah.
They studied it all the time. They talked about it in the bars, and it was what they talked about all the time. And they weren't distracted by a bunch of other stuff.
I'm with you on that. I've given up on. I used to love going to sports, and I'd go down to the football games here at Cardinal Stadium, and watch the baseball. And I don't give a shit, man. I don't care about any of it. It's like I kind of find myself in that seat where it's like I want to talk to people like my friend Bill Jackson, people like you who actually care, who want to restore stuff. Bill's going down. I'm here at the office, but Bill doesn't even live here. He's going down to our board of supervisors. He's doing more than 99.9% of the people in Arizona going down to our board of supervisors and raising hell with the Mickey Klons of the world, the people that are actually doing stuff, the Michelle Swinicks, the people that are standing up and actually trying to fight back. But it's tough. It's like these people are so fantastic and so great, and they have all the great, but it's like, how do you, and maybe I pose it as a question, how do you get through this bureaucracy? Short of, as that guy said, and I'm not being literal here, so, when do we get to use the guns, right? You saw that guy at the rally.
Are you doing the job for which you were hired? I try to reduce things to binary questions. Are you doing everything on the job description? If you're not, you're stealing time. If you're doing more than is on the description, you're stealing authority. In either case, you're stealing.
Right.
We're going to pencil in an indictment for that. You're going to have to go in front of the jury and explain why you shouldn't be convicted of theft. Did you promise to fill in the potholes? Why hasn't that been done? Over at the city, over the mountain here, they've got a city manager accused of misappropriating $850,000. You're telling me nobody noticed at 800, at 750? They didn't notice that much was gone. The 5 or 6 people on the city council didn't seem to be able to get a handle on it. City police work for him, more or less. He's their boss, in other words. So how do you go after this? Grand jury. You give me 25 blue-collar people that shower after work kind of people that spend their evening side by side a fire and a beer. I'll bet in 4 hours they can decide if it looks like we should have a court case. All the grand jury does is determine, is there sufficient cause for this person to prove themselves in court? That's all. It's called an indictment. Proctoring is another function. The teacher used to walk between the desks to make sure you weren't cheating. You weren't cheating, but they still walk between the desks anyway. That's what the investigating jury does. Why can't they do that during the election? Why can't the militia help with the election? Why can't we come and supervise it? Well, the answer is we can, but we have to want to. And it comes back to something I said earlier. Because most people work for somebody else, they just figure everything else is someone else's job. So they're treating their republic like they treat a rental car.
Right.
Well, I know the oil needs changed, but it's not my job to change oil. They should have done that before they rented it to me. Or they can do it after I give it away. If it's your car, you'll change the oil. When you own it, you treat it different. And we have to understand we own this country. And the fact that they're not abusing it. This is another one that mystifies me. People that don't want to get involved because they don't want to get in any trouble. You mean you're not in trouble? How much does your money buy? And it is surprising what I said. It's like paying the cannibals to eat you last kind of thing. I'll just sit here and maybe they won't notice me. No, they know you're there. They're surveilling you. I would pull into the gas station and say clever things to the attendant like, you realize gas has doubled since the last election? No, I didn't realize that. I said, you've been working here the whole time. Oh, I didn't realize it was done. Oh, okay. You must not buy gas is all I can conclude.
Right.
Or milk or eggs or, was it over 100 food production facilities have burned in the last year?
Last year, yeah. There's something like 100.
Well, if you aren't noticing it yet, you will. Maybe we'll all go on a lower cholesterol diet over it, but come on, it's the food chain. It's just a matter of time. I went to a guy's house in an unknown location, and I forgot his name, and everything burned, and he lost everything since I was there. But when I was there, he had a 16-foot section wall with ARs, and above there to the ceiling was ammunition. And his next purchase, he said, was going to be a 50 caliber sniper rifle. I said, what for? He said, well, if they send federal troops for us, and this is in a little town, they're not going to, they weren't even on the target list for the Russians back in the day. There's nothing there. I said, why are they coming for you? We preach against the Muslims in our church. He said, okay. I said, listen, if I'm going to persecute you, if I'm them and I want to persecute you, here's how I'll go about it. Number one is I'll turn off the electricity, take out a few substations, whatever, and you'll have to listen to Glenn Beck some other way because you won't have any power anymore. Number two is I'll use my limited military resources and take over the refineries. So if you're coming to Washington, you're going to have to walk and yell back and forth. It won't be hard at all to persecute us when they decide to flip the switch.
Right.
But if we take the time now, I'm in favor of prepping. You have food in the basement? Why don't you? You have a bunch of, what do you need that you might want in the future? Do you have any? That seems smart to me. Some places it snows heavy or, bridges go out. Why don't you have stuff? Why don't you take the time to meet your neighbors now before it's important to know who they are? Part of the strategy of subjugating us has been to create a world where the kids grow up and move away because they can't afford to pay their college loans staying here. So they move somewhere else and live in a house that they never pay off. And then in 20 years, they move to another community on a cul-de-sac where nobody's home all day long anyway. And they never meet the neighbors and they don't know any. That doesn't work. You got to know your neighbors. What if you need something? What if, play what if however you want. That's called community. Well, making us all individuals is kind of the Chinese model, isn't it? Get the kids to tell on us and so on. It's got to stop. Philosophically, it's got to stop. It's all about relationships. We don't have to agree on everything. Mostly we have to agree that you have the same God-given rights that I do, and you should be allowed to exercise them, and I'll help defend it. That if we have that basic, two basic documents. I like these pocket constitutions because you can refer to either the Declaration or the Constitution periodically anytime you need a reference. In the Declaration, it has a catchy phrase, and in order to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. You feel your rights are secure? If they're not, well, we have the right to address that. In the Constitution, it has a catchy phrase. It gives a list of reasons why we established and ordained this Constitution, but it was to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. If that ain't happening, whose fault is it? It's in the first three words. We the people.
We the people.
We the people all day long.
Bill, how can people get in touch with you about Tactical Civics? What do you offer courses? How does that work?
Go to tacticalcivics.com, tacticalcivics.com, and you can watch Jeff Calhoun give a lovely 13-minute explanation of what Tactical Civics is, and or just go directly to the red button and push it. If you have $5, you can join. If you have, and you meet the criteria. The criteria are, we'd love to have your company. We'd like you to come to our meetings, read our books, and promote us. But if you currently work for the government, you probably can't be part of the organization that supervises government employees. Does that make sense? It's really not sound to have a teacher sit on the school board that votes on salaries. It's conflict of interest. But your spouse could probably join. Once you get in there, download every book. David Zuniga says, hey, download all the books. So download all the audio books, download all the PDFs, read them. In 102 pages in a book called The Great Reset, you'll get a flavor of what it is we're attempting to do. We're doing it at breakneck speed because people want to do it. Now, if you want to get me from the inside, I'm in there, but Bill Ogden at tacticalcivics.com will get you something. You'd be amazed all the people I talk to in a day's time. And from where? Because no matter how we decide to skin this cat, it's an awful lot of people looking to skin this cat. Whatever methodology we choose, whether it's what Mark Fincham's talking about or what People's Operation Restoration are talking about or what Doug McGregor's talking about or Henry Ely's, whatever they're talking about, we're all talking. We're also all talking to each other. Eventually, we're going to all come to the same conclusion, and that is lowest common denominator around here is the plan proposed by Tactical Civics. Because when we enforce the Constitution, Mark Fincham's problem goes away. When we enforce the Constitution, Henry Ely, Energetic Health Institute, problem goes away. When we enforce it, election fraud goes away. On and on and on. It's just a question of, do you play chess?
A little bit.
Queen on the color?
Not too familiar. My dad was the better chess player. He taught me
Queen
when I
on
was
the
young.
color. So if you're
Go
the
ahead.
white pieces and you set up, you put the queen on the white square, right?
Right.
And when you're laying out the board, white to the right.
Right.
That's another. We agree on those things. We agree that we agree what a knight can and cannot do. We agree that if you can move a pawn the whole way across the board, you can bring back any piece that's been captured. Basic rules of chess. Once
Right.
we agree on all those rules, we can play the game. They're supposed to swear an oath to the Constitution. Those are the rules we all agreed to. They said they would uphold, support, and defend the Constitution of the United States. In Pennsylvania, if you don't do that, that's perjury. If you're an elected official that violates your oath of office, you committed perjury, a felony, and you will be removed from office if we can only get you in front of a jury. What does it require? It requires a grand jury. We're busy about restoring the grand jury county by county by county. We're going to do it all at once. We're going to do many counties all the same month. We're going to move in concert. We're not going to be marginalized. We're not going to be demonized. We're not going to be isolated. The other thing we're doing, and I'm preaching a lot of this, the enemy has some basic tactics. One is distraction or diversion. Hey, look over there, aliens. Get us, anything else. What do they say? Friday afternoons when they do the news dump, because we're all thinking about the weekend. But the other tactic is division, to get us to argue. My dad, God love him, is 92 and a half years old. He's a lifetime Democrat. He was born in 1931, New Deal, World War II, Roosevelt, the whole bit. And he's not an evil man. He gets mail from the Democrat Governors Association. It's a white envelope. It's got a blue line, and it says, "Have you seen what the Republicans are up to?" I get mail from the other people. It's a white envelope with a red line. It says, "Have you seen what the Democrats are up to?"
Right.
I'm just sure it comes from the same people.
Right.
Here's what I know. They're stealing from him just like they're stealing from me. So I no longer do Democrat, Republican. I don't do black, white. I don't do young, old. I don't do urban, rural, male, female. I don't do Steelers, Cowboys. I don't do taste great, less filling. I don't do Ford, Chevy. I do us and the people that work for us. And if the people that work for us are stealing pencils, they need to be fired. It's just really not any more complicated than that. Are you doing the job for which you were hired? Where in America can I get a job where nobody watches to see what time I come in or what work product I actually produce other than government? Why is that? Because we, the people, aren't doing our part in this equation. Somebody said to me, we ought to give a test before they can get elected to Congress to see if they know the Constitution. I said, it seems more applicable that we ought to see if the guys voting have any idea what the Constitution says.
Right.
They don't have any idea what these, we're hiring a guy based on what?
Yeah. Where can people find you?
I can be found, like I said, Bill.Ogden at tacticalcivics.com. I have several catchy places I am on the internet. Bill Ogden on Facebook. I think it's Bill Ogden all jammed together on Rumble. That's entertaining. It's probably Bill_Ogden on Twitter. I think it's a catchy name. It'll probably go far. I do a Zoom with Tactical Civics every Wednesday night. I'm the numbers guy. I'm the growth guy. I said, you want numbers? I'll get you numbers. That's the easy part. Get them all facing the same direction. It's a little harder. Yeah. You would think this would be simple to do. Where I live, they still have their 2016 Trump signs up. Those signs have never come down. There's a community called Osceola Mills. When you drive in, there's a flag hanging off a telephone pole that says F Joe Biden. And on the other side, it says the same thing, leave it. I pulled up behind a pickup truck somewhere, bumper sticker, F Joe Biden. Then below it's another one that says, and if you like them, F you too. And okay, so they're not happy. What are you going to do about it? And this is my question for your viewers. How bad do things actually have to get before you'll do something? I mean, we can all sit around and complain. When are you actually going to stand up and do something? I believe what I'm doing is the solution. That's why I'm doing it. Will work. That's why I'm doing it. And can be affected in a relatively short period of time. That's why I'm doing it. I'm not looking for a career or a hobby or anything else. I want this done, and I want it to be finished. I'm not looking for a permanent project, but a completed one.
Right.
I'm even willing to fail. I don't think I will, but I'm willing to fail rather than do nothing. I cannot stand the notion that I could have done something and I did not. And so, like that spokes on a wheel, I've looked at most of those various avenues for a solution and found them all wanting. And then I found this. And so, that'll work. All I have to do is get a bunch of people to agree. Well, 12x in 12 months, I think that's pretty good.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Well, Bill, always amazing to see you. We'll have you back on tacticalcivics.com. Follow Bill. He's incredible. And thank you so much for coming on. Always good to chat with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.